Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is actually a recurring guest. It's the second time on the podcast, Suzie Hall. Hi, Suzie.
Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a guest again. Our first episode was super inspiring, very successful, where you shared so much knowledge and your experience. And now you actually are publishing a memoir, which is going to be very powerful. And I am just thrilled to talk about that and present it to our listeners. And hopefully each one of them will be inspired to get it and read it. But let me introduce you a little bit, do the entire bio, as we always do. So you are a global entrepreneur. You're a founder and CEO of 4 companies, award-winning designer, a CEO of influence and high-profile community. A CEO of influence and a high-profile community philanthropist. You are purposely inspire writers and leads from your heart. And that is true. I mean, I heard you speak on stage. You were a guest here, as I said, on this podcast. You were a guest on other podcasts that our listeners can listen to. And you definitely talk from the heart. You have a story to tell, and you tell it with so much passion and so much conviction that people have to listen to you. Absolutely. So after you transform yourself and your life, you are passionate about helping others break free from constraints and limitations and choosing instead to design the life of their dreams, which is a beautiful thing to do and to help others. So, Suzie, we talked about, and I'm going to include in the show notes our previous episode, but just in a synopsis, in a basically summary, tell us about your story. And I know summarizing it would not do it, justice, because that's what your memoir is about. But maybe the key points, so people will know that you are really talking, you know what you're talking about when you talk, and you talk about transforming your life and about creating the life that, the design, by design, basically.
Yes, thank you again. So I would say at a high level, I grew up the daughter of a major college football coach, which was, I've learned, is a very, very unique way to grow up, especially as a female. And that exposed me to high stakes, big games, big ups and downs with wins and losses and bowl games and all that sort of thing. So I use a football theme throughout my memoir because that's how I think a lot. And I got to the point in my life where I hit rock bottom, and I consider that the halftime of my life. So during a halftime of any kind of event, that's the time when you take a step back, you refocus, you decide what you're going to put into the remaining time you have to win the game. So that's what I've done with my transformation journey. Rather than staying on the sidelines, staying small, playing small, I talk about all those things. And what I've learned, the biggest thing is that everything we need is already inside of us. And when I turn my focus from the external to the internal, the results have been astounding. I share that with everybody that I work with, my readers, viewers. And so, yeah, I'm so excited to talk more about that.
Absolutely. So you were talking about the low point in your life, the halftime. What happened? Tell us a little bit more about that story and that shift and transformation. What happened?
Yeah. So again, kind of at a high level, my second marriage collapsed. There was betrayal involved. And I had just joined EO a few months before. They were kind of a lifeline for me. And
which is an entrepreneur organization, for those listeners that don't know. We're both part of that organization, which is basically, how would you describe it? It's an organization that supports entrepreneurs that It's peer learning. It's a very strong organization, and it's a big part of both of our lives.
Right, right. So that was a lifeline for me. And with 3 kids at home, a business, and having just built a dream house and all of these things, all of a sudden the rug was pulled out from under me and it all came crashing down. And I had to decide how I was going to respond. And rather than go down the road of blame and finger pointing and devastation, I decided that I was going to pick myself up and redesign or design a new life, basically. And so I have rebuilt myself and my life, including relationships with my family, with my colleagues, going from owning 1 business to 4. My world has just expanded exponentially because first from the choice, but second, because of the work I put in through what I now call the staircase of personal transformation. And that's what I want to share with others as to how they too can transform themselves and their lives by going within, starting there and doing the work.
Absolutely. So one thing that you didn't do is you didn't become the victim. You know, you didn't stand there and say, poor me. Did you have
I used to do that. Yeah.
Right, but that's really the turning point, right? When you decided, okay, you know, it's kind of like I'm not the victim, I'm actually the hero here, and I'm going to push forward.
Yeah, because when I was in college, I thought I was going to be a newscaster, and I did an internship at a TV station my senior year. And when I watched my demo tape, guess what? I judged myself and I said, absolutely no way. There's no way I am comfortable putting myself out there. So I talked myself out of what I wanted to do.
Wow.
And that is called playing small. And my first half of my life was all about the show. I talk about the show, everything outward facing, most likely to succeed in high school, the dean scholar of the business school and college, all the things, all the achievements. But I was empty inside, and that's not very sustainable. And so again, when it all came crashing down and the curtain came down, all the things, it was a pretty powerful time. We all have times like that in our lives, different ways. It might not be a halftime, it might be something else. It's never too late to redesign yourself and your life. And that's what I hope to inspire and empower people around.
Yeah, that sounds definitely, you know, we get motivated by inspirational stories of people that actually were able to accomplish that. So what do you see that entrepreneurs make in terms of I don't know if mistakes, but maybe not doing it the way that they should be doing it in order to be successful? Like, what are some of the self-limiting beliefs that you see entrepreneurs have that you go, oh boy, you know, that is really like you are pulling yourself down, you're keeping yourself small. What will be some of those attitudes that you observed?
Yeah, and I think we touched on that a little bit in the last episode. So as entrepreneurs, you know, we love the bright, shiny objects and the ideas and all the opportunities and this and that. So learning learning what to pay attention to. There's millions of bits of information, you know, that are around us every day. We choose what to tune into. I think as entrepreneurs, my journey has been the more that I prioritize the inputs, is what I call them, that are high quality versus low quality, that gets my mindset at a much higher level. Second item is don't do everything yourself. Don't try to do everything yourself. Get experts in to help in the areas that you're weak or that aren't your strengths, so that we can focus on what our strengths are and play the biggest game of our life. And like I say, light up the scoreboards of our life. That's what it's all about. And as entrepreneurs, we want that. A lot of times we just can't figure out quite how to get there.
Right.
And then third is surround ourselves with the people that we want to be like. So a famous author said, you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Well, look around at our circles. Are those people the people we want to emulate and be like? Do they encourage us? Do they inspire us? Do they lift us up? All those things. As entrepreneurs, again, we're usually pretty people oriented and we like all of that. Sometimes we try to do it all rather than focusing on what we want. And we learn what we want by designing our life and coming backwards, right? So at the end of our life, at the end of our game of life, what do we want the scoreboard to read? Well, I want to have a big victory. Well, my victory looks different than probably someone else's victory. So determining what that is and working backwards is so, so important.
It is. It's absolutely important. As you said, we touched upon it, especially the delegation. I mean, that's how you build for successful businesses. And we address that. But let's talk about you as a person. Because now you're writing, I mean, you're definitely out there exposing, this is who I am, right? I mean, it's your memoir, it's your life. I mean, people are going to know Suzie inside and out, you know, you're just putting it out there. So was that hard to actually put yourself like that?
Yeah. And like you mentioned at the beginning, taking the stage at EO Alchemy in front of several hundred EO members and being very vulnerable and raw and sharing my story, that was a big deal. And it just feels like a calling for me that, you know, God's like, okay, it's time for you, share your story. Cause that's what helped me. Hearing other stories, learning from Brene Brown, learning about all that sort of thing. And so entrepreneurs, sometimes we want to, you know, keep up the show and make everything seem like it's just jolly when inside things are crumbling. So that was challenging, but the 50 people that came up to me afterwards over the next day and said, thank you. Oh my gosh, this in my life and this in my life, that was the affirmation that like, the more we all do this, the more we grow and we heal and we learn and we expand.
That is correct. So tell us a little bit about your life, about the design of your life. Let's talk, let's really give the example.
Yes.
When did you design your life, the design of the life that you want?
Mm-hmm.
And how are you progressing on that?
Yeah, that's spot on. So my journey, the beginning of my halftime was in 2013. And I started with family and relationships first. And like I said, my inner state. From that, as I cleared out negative thought patterns and limiting beliefs and habits that kept me small, I started to expand in business. I started to expand in lifestyle. I started to expand in joy. So today, almost 12 years later, I landed the biggest contract in company history last fall. The biggest,
Congratulations.
thank you, the biggest contract by almost 10 times.
Wow.
Yeah, so 10x any previous contract in 30 years of business. And I know it's because of the work I did and cleared out all of that space that was, you know, mental space, emotional, you know, all that clutter, cleared out the space so that I could receive this. And I'm living in a dream house, walking distance to my granddaughter. I chaired a philanthropic year-long community event that ended a year and a half ago, broke all records to raise money for cancer care in Idaho. And so lighting up the scoreboard of my life, it's all those things. It's not just one thing. And going from owning one company to 4, and now we started to go international. So I had a business meeting in Paris last August as a result of intending and, you know, journaling and designing my life. What do I want? And then working backwards. And guess what? People appeared in my life to help me get to where I want to be.
That is fantastic. That is, Suzie, that is definitely an accomplishment and showing that it's possible and it's within us. If we decide, we get it.
Yes.
So I'm curious, you know, I'm a systems person. I'm all about systems, and we talk about scaling and systematizing on our last episode, but you mentioned 10x. So you 10x your business. How does that work in terms of your internal systems? I mean, did it break any of the systems? Did you have to fortify some of the systems? How did it work?
Yeah, and it's a great question. So the contract actually spans 2 of my companies. And one of the companies, I outsource all of the design work now to world-renowned, award-winning design firms. So I removed myself from the design equation and placed it carefully in the hands of experts. That freed me up to then lead the procurement team, which is the purchasing and installation of all the furnishings that go into a hotel. And then at one point, because we're 6 months into the project, 5 months, then I'll bring in more specialists to help me build that out. So it's putting key players in the right roles that have freed me up to focus on the areas that I want to grow and expand. I love what I do. It's not like I want to just scale and exit and go on to the next thing. It's like I love my life and everything that I'm doing in it. I like the variety. So sometimes I'm a little bit more in the weeds right now on the procurement side, but I know and I have a plan for having the key people in place. And one thing I've learned is I don't need as many people as I thought I did.
Because
the teams are better, they're higher quality, they're more seasoned, they're more efficient in their own systems. And rather than having layers upon layers of people and personnel, it's a very simple, robust system.
that's wonderful. So what I'm hearing here is that even to have the life that you want, the life by design, you have to have a system on how to build that life, because it's work, right? It's like working out. So I'm sure in your, you have that, you have the football analogy. You have to have a coach, right? You have to have somebody who gets you, pushes you, but you have to have a routine. You have to exercise. You have to work at it. It's not without having a system of self-improvement and actions that you are doing, you're not going to get to the life that you want. Is that true?
Totally true. And the biggest system improvement that I made in my life is to instill what I call a morning groove. Some people call it a morning routine or, different things. I like groove because I like to dance and I like the positive energy that brings forward. I never liked getting up early, ever. I was like, oh, I want to stay up late and try again, that entrepreneurial mindset. I'd bring my laptop to bed. I'd be working till midnight and then try to get up and get going in the morning. And it just wasn't a good process. So I learned early on after my halftime, okay, Suzie, to do the work, you've got to get up early and you've got to get yourself ready to go on the field every day. And so that single system change, that adjustment in my life, again, profound. And it's translated to everything in my life, especially business. Because when we show up as leaders and CEOs, people who we want to influence people. We don't want to overpower them and, be intimidating and all that sort of thing. When we show up heart-led and authentic and grounded and ready to expand, people respond.
It's true.
And so when we're prepared for the day, that's the single most important system that I implemented that I still do today.
So what do you do? Tell us about your morning groove.
Yeah. So I wake up and I sometimes exercise early, sometimes not. I always stretch. I always let the daylight in because it's so important to our circadian rhythm and our mental well-being. As soon as the sun rises, we're supposed to be awake and start our days and create. Sometimes I exercise, I pray, I read, I journal, I reflect, and I always write 3 things down that I'm grateful for. And then I write down the 3 things that I want to accomplish during the day. I don't have a calendar. This is all like, okay, here's the 3 biggest things I want to accomplish today. Not like what time am I going to do them? And then the next morning I reflect, or that night actually I reflect. And then the next morning I recap and do it for that upcoming day. And this is a great way to track your progress.
Absolutely. You have to decide what you want. You have to set those goals. And I interviewed many entrepreneurs, and that is a common denominator. They have a purpose, they know what they want, and they definitely state those goals and then do the actions that are needed in order to make them happen. So,
yeah. And breath work is so important, and just clearing that mind through meditation, through mindfulness, through yoga. There's a lot of ways to do that. And so clearing our mind allows, I think, the space and also the opportunity for magic to happen. Because if we're just focused on the next thing, we're limiting ourselves. When we lift our eyes up and welcome what's possible, that's where the brilliance happens.
For sure. So if people want to get your book, and they should, where should they go?
First place to go is my website, suziehall.com, SUZIEHALL.com, and you'll see a link to Blessed Disruption. You can go on Amazon and search the title, search my name. There is also a companion playbook, which is the how-to of the Staircase of Personal Transformation that goes hand in hand with the memoir. And that is golden, and that's my give back. That's my sharing of the 10-year journey and all the people and the thought leaders and the authors that helped me.
That's fantastic. Now, if people want to ask you questions or get a hold of you, what's the best way of getting a hold of you?
To send an email to hello@suziehall.com, SUZIEHALL.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn just by my name, and I'm on LinkedIn messaging quite a bit.
Fantastic. Suzie, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast again. I have a feeling that we're going to do another episode, because you're probably going to publish another book, or it's going to be some other thing, some other adventure in your life that we have to talk about. So thank you for being a guest on this podcast and for inspiring all of us.
Oh, thank you so much, Audie. My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.